Welcome back to the channel, folks, where we dive into the wild, wonderful world of men transforming into women in all kinds of fascinating ways. If that's your vibe, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Now let's jump right into today's story.
Bradley Bumbersnatch never believed in magic. Not really. Sure, he played Dungeons and Dragons, but his idea of spellcasting was microwaving a burrito at 3 a.m. and hoping it didn't explode. His friends called him Bumble, partly for his last name, partly for his tendency to crash into furniture despite being a perfectly sober 30-year-old man with allegedly functioning depth perception. "I dare you," his roommate Derek had said earlier that evening, pointing to the peculiar purple storefront that had appeared seemingly overnight between the laundromat and the Korean taco place. $20 says you won't go in there. "What am I, 12? Bradley had scoffed, even as he pocketed Derek's 20. "It's just some tourist trap selling overpriced crystals and incense that smells like a hippie's armpit." Yet here he was, pushing open a door that groaned like it was auditioning for a horror movie soundtrack. The smell hit him immediately, not patchouli as expected, but something more intriguing: cinnamon, aged paper, and what he could only describe as midnight in a bottle. "Hello," Bradley called out, squinting in the dim light. The shop was cluttered with artifacts that defied categorization, bottles filled with swirling liquids that seemed to change color when he wasn't looking directly at them, books bound in materials he couldn't identify, and what appeared to be a stuffed raven wearing tiny spectacles. "Well, well, well," came a voice from behind a beaded curtain. "What have we here?" A skeptic with a curious heart. Bradley spun around, nearly knocking over a display of what looked suspiciously like preserved dragon testicles in formaldehyde. "Just browsing," he said, trying to sound casual while frantically steadying the wobbling jars. The shop's proprietor emerged, an ancient woman with a spine curved like a question mark and eyes that glittered with mischief. Her silver hair was piled atop her head in an architectural feat that defied gravity, secured with what appeared to be 2 knitting needles and possibly a wand. "Madame Morgana," she introduced herself, extending a hand adorned with rings on every finger, including her thumb, which Bradley found oddly unsettling. "Purveyor of the peculiar and the possible." "Bradley," he replied, awkwardly shaking her bejeweled fingers. "Purveyor of, nothing in particular, just a guy who lost a bet." "Ah," Madame Morgana nodded sagely. The skeptic's introduction to magic, peer pressure, and gambling, tale as old as time. Bradley snorted. "Magic? No offense, but I've seen better special effects in B-movies from the 80s. Says the man who names his D&D character after fantasy novel protagonists with the serial numbers filed off. Madame Morgana replied with a knowing smirk. Bradley's jaw dropped. "How did you?" "Your t-shirt has a 20-sided die on it that says, 'How do you want to do this?' And you're carrying character sheets in your back pocket," she said, gesturing to the papers peeking out of his jeans. "I'm magical, not psychic, though I do have a cream for those hemorrhoids you've been too embarrassed to see a doctor about." Bradley's face flushed crimson. "I don't have." "Preventative medicine, then," she cackled, waving a feather duster that looked suspiciously like a phoenix tail. "Now, what brings you to my humble establishment? Looking for love? Fortune? A cure for that receding hairline you keep checking in your front-facing camera?" Bradley instinctively touched his forehead. "My hairline is not..." He stopped himself. "Look, I just came in on a dare. Maybe I'll buy a fake wand or one of those crystals that supposedly clear your chakras, but really just empty your wallet." Madame Morgana's eyes narrowed, sizing him up like a butcher contemplating a particularly troublesome cut of meat. "I think what you need, dear boy, is a complimentary enchantment." What now?" "It's on the house, dear," she cackled, dusting a shelf of potions that seemed to glow in response. "You look like you could use a change." Bradley grinned, leaning against a bookshelf that immediately groaned in protest. He straightened up quickly. "What, like a haircut? Maybe some magical Rogin." Madame Morgana's grin was all secrets, the kind that made Bradley think of sharks and tax audits. "Something more interesting." "Interesting like how?" Bradley asked, suddenly aware that the stuffed raven was watching him. Had it moved? Because if we're talking about enlarging any part of my anatomy, I should warn you I'm already quite satisfied with my. Oh, darling, Madame Morgana interrupted with a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. Size is so mundane. I'm thinking of something more transformative. Before he could protest, she uttered a string of words that sounded like a cat coughing up a hairball in Latin, while gargling mouthwash and possibly stepping on a Lego. With a snap of her fingers that echoed like a thunderclap, the world shimmered around Bradley, colors blending and swirling like a kaleidoscope on acid. Wait, what are you? Bradley began, but his voice caught in his throat as a peculiar sensation washed over him. Oh shit, she wasn't kidding about magic. Derek is never going to believe this. Actually, I don't believe this. I'm probably hallucinating from some weird incense fumes. That's it. Just a contact high from Eau de Witch shop. It started with a whoosh, like all the air had been sucked out of the room and replaced with champagne bubbles under his skin. Bradley's body tingled, 1,000 tiny pinpricks from head to toe, as if an army of microscopic acupuncturists had declared war on his nerve endings. What the actual? He gasped, words turning into a surprised squeak as his vocal cords tightened and shifted. Language, dear, Madame Morgana admonished with a wink. Though I suppose you'll want to practice your new voice. The first few sentences always sound like a pubescent boy discovering helium. Bradley looked down, expecting maybe a new set of eyebrows or, worst-case scenario, a tail. What he saw instead made his jaw drop so fast he nearly dislocated it. His hands were dwindling before his eyes, fingers growing slender like delicate piano keys, knuckles smoothing out as if airbrushed by an overzealous Instagram filter. His nails, previously bitten to the quick and sporting a permanent rim of Dorito dust, elongated and rounded out with a perfect, natural French tip. Manicure by magic, he muttered, voice already climbing octaves, flexing his newly dainty digits. Are you turning me into a woman? What gave it away? Madame Morgana asked innocently, handing him a small, ornate hand mirror. The disappearing Adam's apple, or the fact that your voice now sounds like you could voice the sexy fish in an animated movie? This can't be happening, Bradley thought frantically. This is some elaborate prank. Derek probably hired an actress with special effects makeup. Any minute now, someone's going to jump out with a camera. But as he glanced in the mirror, he saw his stubble receding like an outgoing tide, leaving baby-smooth skin in its wake. His arms followed suit, thinning out, dark hair vanishing as if erased by a cosmic rubber. Shoulders narrowed with an audible pop-pop-pop of rearranging bones, collarbones emerging like twin mountain ridges on a topographic map of suddenly feminine. Is this what it feels like to be in a perfume ad? Bradley mused aloud, as his neck lengthened, chin sharpening into a heart-shaped masterpiece. Because I suddenly have the inexplicable urge to frolic through a field of flowers while whispering nonsensically about freedom and desire. That's just the hormones, Madame Morgana explained, casually reorganizing a shelf of what appeared to be bottled emotions. Bradley could clearly read teenage angst and midlife crisis on two of the larger containers. They'll settle down once your body finishes rearranging itself, though the desire to roll your eyes at mansplaining will be permanent, I'm afraid. Then came what Bradley would later describe as the torso tornado. His chest quivered. At first, he thought maybe he was having a mild heart attack, but no, something was inflating. Two gentle, tingling swells rose on his chest, pushing against his faded Metallica t-shirt with increasing insistence. Oh my God, he gasped, voice now firmly in soprano territory. They're so perky. Is that normal? They feel like they're defying gravity. Also, why are my nipples suddenly so opinionated? I can feel them disagreeing with the room temperature. They're brand new, dear, Madame Morgana explained, handing him a cup of tea that had definitely not been there a moment ago. Everything's sensitive at first, like a baby deer learning to walk, except in your case, it's learning to fill out a sweater. His waist cinched in so tightly he could almost hear his internal organs sending out eviction notices, rearranging themselves like tenants during a renovation. Hips expanded outward with a strange elastic sensation, pelvis tilting, a new swagger baked right into his bones. His backside blossomed, rounding out with a bounce that would make a yoga instructor jealous. I feel like I'm being poured into an hourglass, Bradley wheezed, trying to adjust to the new center of gravity. Is this what shapewear feels like? Because if so, I owe several ex-girlfriends an apology for not understanding their suffering. Better than shapewear, Madame Morgana corrected. This is the real deal. Those curves are load-bearing, architecturally sound. You could balance a book on that derriere. Bradley tried to wriggle in his jeans, but they now fit like a sausage casing on a watermelon, too tight in some places, weirdly loose in others. There was a distinct absence between his legs that made him simultaneously panic and marvel at the newfound room in his underwear. Where did my... He gestured vaguely downward, unable to quite articulate the question. Transmuted, Madame Morgana said with a dismissive wave. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, merely rearranged. What was outside is now inside, what was forward is now. She made a folding motion with her hands. Inward, you've still got all the nerve endings, just redecorated. That's both horrifying and fascinating, Bradley, who was rapidly becoming less Bradley by the second, remarked. Like a magician's act where the rabbit doesn't just go into the hat, it becomes the hat. His legs, oh, his legs, lengthened with a series of not unpleasant stretching sensations, thighs smoothing into elegant curves, calves defining themselves like they were auditioning for a leg shaving commercial. The hair all but evaporated, skin turning so smooth and soft it made silk feel like sandpaper in comparison. I just lost 3 years of my life I spent learning to shave my legs properly, he marveled, running newly delicate fingers over skin that felt alien yet somehow right. Do you know how many YouTube tutorials that took? The universe gives and takes away, Madame Morgana philosophized. You've lost body hair, but gained the ability to detect a half-off shoe sale from 3 blocks away. He wobbled on suddenly dainty feet, toes shrinking, arches rising as if invisible high heels were already molding them. If I ever wear actual heels, I'm billing you for my physical therapy, and possibly the hip replacement I'll need by 40. His face was the last to change, and it was an event worthy of its own documentary. Cheekbones lifted to the heavens like they were trying to commune with the gods of supermodels past. His jawline receded, softening the angles that had once made him look ruggedly handsome, according to his mother, and only his mother. Lips plumped up into a natural pout that would make a plastic surgeon weep with jealousy. His nose shrank a fraction, the slight bump that had been the result of a middle school dodgeball incident smoothing away. Eyebrows arched just right, not surprised, not angry, but perpetually intrigued, as if the world had just told an amusing anecdote at a cocktail party. As a final flourish, his short brown hair, which had been in desperate need of a trim for weeks, tumbled past his shoulders in a cascade of glossy chestnut waves, each strand catching the light as if auditioning for a shampoo endorsement. Did I just grow 3 feet of hair in 30 seconds? He asked in disbelief, touching the silky strands. That's like speedrunning puberty. Hair Rogaine wishes it could mark it. He blinked, eyelashes fluttering like butterfly wings having a seizure. Mirror, I need a full mirror. Madame Morgana obliged, conjuring a full-length one with a snap that appeared out of thin air, standing on ornate feet shaped like dragon claws. Bradley, now unmistakably not Bradley, gawked at her reflection. She was, to her own utter bewilderment, stunning. Not just pretty, not just cute, but the kind of gorgeous that made people walk into lamp posts. If she'd walked into her own high school reunion, half the class would have choked on their appetizers, and the other half would have suddenly developed mysterious back problems from trying to sit up straighter. Holy shit! The newly minted woman breathed, turning sideways to examine her profile. I'm hot, like unfairly hot, like created by an algorithm analyzing the most clicked-on Instagram models hot. Bradley doesn't quite suit you anymore, does it? Madame Morgana mused, tapping her chin. What shall we call you? Bria, she suggested, the name popping into her head like it had been waiting there all along. Bria Bumbersnatch, keeps the alliteration, loses the testosterone. Excellent choice, Madame Morgana approved. Now you sound like either a romance novelist or a high-end lingerie designer. Multiple career paths, very forward-thinking. Bria twisted, stared at her new curves, then tried a little dance step. Her hips swayed like they'd been born to salsa, and her chest gave a perky bounce that nearly took out a display of crystal balls. Whoa, she steadied herself, marveling at the new distribution of weight. This is going to be a learning curve. Literally. I feel like I'm driving a new car, except the car is me, and someone moved all the gears and installed airbags where the glove compartment used to be. Her voice, a velvet, musical contralto that could probably read the weather and win a daytime Emmy, still surprised her every time she spoke. I sound like I should be doing ASMR videos or phone sex, she remarked, then clapped a hand over her mouth. Oh God, I didn't mean to say that out loud. The filter between brain and mouth takes some readjusting, Madame Morgana explained. New hormones, new impulse control, you'll get the hang of it. Bria touched her face, feeling the soft skin, the high cheekbones that could probably cut glass if she tried hard enough. Then lower, gingerly, to her chest, which was both fascinating and alarming in its responsiveness. Well, these are definitely not going to fit into my old t-shirts, she observed, cupping her new endowments experimentally. I've gone from bird chest to eyes up here, buddy, in less time than it takes to order a pizza. They're quite becoming, Madame Morgana observed clinically. Proportional. Unlike some of my earlier work, poor Mrs. Fitzwilliam had to have a reduction after I accidentally made her look like she was smuggling beach balls. Bria's eyes widened. You've done this before, there are others like me walking around. Oh, darling, Madame Morgana cackled, you'd be surprised how many people in this city aren't what they appear to be. That handsome barista at the corner coffee shop used to be the most miserable accountant until he stumbled in here looking for tax software. The weather girl on Channel 4, former linebacker for the Patriots. Bria stared at her reflection again, reality finally sinking in. Is this permanent? She asked, a note of panic creeping into her melodious voice. Because I have a Zoom call with my boss tomorrow, and I don't think, sorry I'm late, I spontaneously changed genders is covered by the employee handbook. The witch shrugged, the movement sending several of her necklaces clanking against each other like wind chimes in a hurricane. Depends, you could try the reversal spell, but it's in my other cauldron. Might take a week to brew, maybe a decade. Who can say? Time is such a fluid concept in magic. Like gender, apparently, she added with a wink. Bria groaned, the sound coming out far more sensual than intended. You know I work at a hardware store, right? I'm going to be the only employee who can't reach the top shelf and gets unsolicited advice about moisturizer from men who don't know which end of a hammer to hold. On the contrary, Madame Morgana countered, you'll find men suddenly very eager to carry heavy things for you and explain basic concepts you've understood for years. It's like having servants who pay for the privilege by buying you drinks. Bria snorted, then immediately covered her nose, surprised by how dainty even that sound had become. Great. Traded upper body strength for random men opening doors for me. Seems like a fair exchange. Every new adventure comes with a few perks and pitfalls, Morgana said, straightening a display of what appeared to be enchanted lipsticks. One was labeled Truth Serum Red, and another Kiss of Temporary Amnesia Pink. Bria caught herself in the mirror again, struck by the surreal image reflected back at her. The woman in the glass was undeniably gorgeous, but also undeniably her. Something in the eyes, in the quirk of the lips when she smiled, remained essentially Bradley. On the bright side, Bria mused, striking a pose that came unnaturally naturally, I could probably get free drinks for life, and I'll finally know how those Instagram beauty gurus do their eyeliner. Though I suspect magic might have been their secret all along too. She took a cautious step, hips swaying with a rhythm she certainly hadn't programmed but couldn't seem to turn off. And if anyone asks, I'll just say I'm my own identical cousin visiting from out of town. Oh, Bradley? He's, traveling indefinitely in the Himalayas with monks, who have taken a vow of silence and don't have Wi-Fi. Madame Morgana handed her a small, glittering compact that seemed to be made of abalone shell and possibly starlight. You'll want this, trust me. Bria opened it. Inside, instead of powder, was a little note written in flowing script that seemed to shimmer and change colors. Enjoy the ride. She grinned, a wicked, delighted grin that transformed her face from merely beautiful to absolutely captivating. Oh, I will. But first, I need a new wardrobe, a crash course in walking in heels, and possibly a support group for magically transformed persons, MTP for short. Do you offer aftercare services, or is this more of a figure-it-out-yourself situation? The universe provides, Madame Morgana said enigmatically. Though in your case, I'd suggest Victoria's Secret for the immediate future. Your new measurements are 36C2436, in case you're wondering. And yes, that's mathematically improbable, but so is spontaneous gender transformation, so let's not quibble about proportions. As Bria sashayed toward the exit, a movement her hips seemed to have mastered without consulting her brain, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She fished it out, nearly dropping it when she saw her reflection in the black screen. Pouty lips, perfect cheekbones, and eyelashes that could generate their own breeze. "Damn," she whispered, "I'm going to need a new driver's license photo. For once in my life, I might actually look good in ID pictures." The text from her best friend Derek lit up the screen. "Dude, where are you? You've been in that weird shop for like an hour. Did you fall into a cauldron?" She smirked, thumbs flying across the screen with newly elegant fingers tipped by perfect nails that somehow didn't impede her typing speed. "Long story, bro, you won't believe it. But you'll recognize me. I'm the one with the killer cheekbones, legs for days, and absolutely no idea what I'm doing. Also, you owe me $20 and a bra fitting." She turned back to Madame Morgana, who was already helping another customer. A harried-looking middle-aged woman complaining about hot flashes and an unsympathetic husband. "Thank you," Bria called out, surprising herself with the sincerity in her voice. "I think." The witch looked up, those ancient eyes twinkling with mischief and perhaps a touch of genuine warmth. "Come back next week for your first menstruation spell. I'll make it painless, unlike Mother Nature's version." Bria blanched, newfound confidence momentarily shaken. Wait, what? But Madame Morgana had already turned away, cackling as she led her new customer behind the beaded curtain, leaving Bria to step out into a world that was both exactly the same and completely different, much like herself.